Good evening, everyone. I'd like to call this meeting to order. Would you all please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance?
Pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I'd like you all to stand for 10 seconds for a moment of silence. I'd also like you to remember our past Mayor R.B.'s father-in-law passed away today. Thank you. You may be seated.
Deanne, will you call the roll, please?
Commissioner Robel?
Here.
Commissioner Hanna?
Here.
Vice Mayor Hoofnagel?
Here.
Commissioner Palumbo?
Here.
Mayor Johnson, Mayor Kennedy?
Here. Okay, agenda item number 1 would the Pinellas County Sheriff's Department like to come forward. Just so everyone knows, I like to mention this, that the Sheriff's Department comes every meeting that we have, the second Tuesday of the month, and for 15 minutes before the meeting starts, you can meet with them if there's anything you would like to discuss.
Good evening. I am Sergeant Tacey with Sheriff's Office, as you said. I'm going to give you guys the stat report for November 2018. I always like to ask, did you guys get an email that just came out today? So, okay. Page 1 goes over the crimes. There's 3 larcenies on there that showed up for the month of 2018. I'll talk about those 3 a little bit later. Page 2, we had 15 people arrested. I'll hit the highlights of those, but what I would want to know if I was you guys a little bit later as well. Page 3, there was 889 events, 1,253 responding units to the city of Indian Rocks Beach for the month. If you look at these deputy activities, all the way down to pretty much alarm and then a couple after, the majority of that is self-initiated activity. You can see that they're staying busy within the city. Page 4, you have 5 car accidents, 2 at Gulf Boulevard and 4th Avenue, 1 at 8th and 1st, 1 16th and Gulf Boulevard, and 1 at 1700 Gulf Boulevard. There were 385 citations issued for the month of November. That's split between 47 citations, 1 parking citation, and 337 warnings. The larcenies that I told you I would talk about, the 3 of them, there was 1 that was at a home, 378 12th Avenue. It was looks like it's going to be possibly a AC repairman, or that's the only lead that they have at this point. But they were in the house and some items are missing. The second is it was at Kooky Coconut. Female's purse was stolen. It was recovered by the juveniles. Victim refused to prosecute, so there's nothing done with that. The Red Lion also had a more of like a civil situation where the food was ordered and not paid for. The major, I have felony possession of controlled substance that I'll go over. 1802 Gulf Boulevard, there was a transient lady who was cleaning some of the condos. She decided to squat in one of the condos. The owner found some things that looked like to her meth-making material. They called us out. We had narcotics detectives come out. We were able to, through different means, get her to the scene. She was arrested there that night. The scene was cleaned up by the narcotics detectives. Second was another felony possession of a controlled substance. It was a self-initiated traffic stop. The female had a suspended license. The vehicle was searched and some meth was found inside the vehicle. I need to say that the cleaning lady and this traffic stop were non-residents of Indian Rocks Beach. The third was a special exposure of sexual organs. This occurred on the beach. The gentleman was wearing something that didn't cover everything. exposed himself to some people, and he was arrested. Again, not a resident of any Rocks Beach, just someone visiting the beach. With that, Merry Christmas. If you have any questions.
Any commissioners have any questions for the Sheriff's Department tonight?
I have one.
Yes, Bill.
Are you up to speed with anybody soliciting without proper permits? The reason I bring this up, I spoke with the city manager tonight. I had a call from some folks that said there were two gentlemen walking through the neighborhood, not driving but walking, knocking on doors, trying to sell solar panels and solar electricity. And they're not supposed to do that without a permit to be salespeople on the license unless they're a non-profit organization. So I called the city manager and he called, but I didn't know if we had any other reports of people doing that.
I didn't see any of that.
Okay. It's not what they were selling,
advertise.
but it was just the fact that, is this a sneaky way of casing a place? I mean, time of year, packages on the porch. So part of what I want to say is for people just to be aware that this can't happen during the shade. And it could have been very legitimate, but you know.
To answer your question, no, I don't have any knowledge of that.
Good, thank you.
Anyone else? Okay, thank you. Happy holidays to you too.
Thank you.
Next, Chief Burton, if you'd like to come forward, we're going to have a presentation about Hurricane Michael.
Okay, thank you for having me here. I know you've got a full agenda, so I'll be as brief as I can. I had the opportunity with a group of professionals from Pinellas County to deploy for Hurricane Michael as part of a strike team that's set up by the Florida Fire Chiefs Association. It's a plan that originated after Hurricane Andrew on how to move large amounts of resources into other areas. Next. Okay, a strike team simply is 5 like resources with leadership. So I served as a strike team leader along with a counterpart of mine from Safety Harbor. We had resources from St. Pete, Lellman, Palm Harbor, East Lake, and Largo. We were about day 4. We deployed on a late Saturday night was our launch. We assembled at 2:30 in the morning at Countryside Mall and left for the long trip to the Florida Panhandle at 2:30 in the morning. One challenge we faced initially is finding fuel on the way to Tallahassee at 5 in the morning in Perry, Florida. But we were able to get through that. A long trip up. If you're not exactly familiar, we were in mostly the cities of Lynn Haven, Callaway, and Springfield. Tallahassee is on the map. It's about 2 hours west of Tallahassee. So that became a challenge. To give you a perspective on how far inland we operated, it's equivalent with where Pinellas Park would be in relationship to the Gulf of Mexico. And we saw significant damage that far inland. I was actually quite surprised at how far the damage was inland. This is part of our journey there. The target sign became really important because we knew that was a fuel stop where the state had set up a fuel center. And new modern buildings with glass, that was a typical configuration on the right picture of how medical complexes and that looked like, which created then problems for those in the community trying to get care, banking, all of those sorts of things. This was a home directly behind the Lynn Haven Fire Station. This gentleman was living in this home on the days we were there under that blue tarp. We re-tarped it for him, but those are very similar conditions we saw throughout Bay County, particularly in the areas we were working. And again, it's 12 to 15 miles inland. Some of the work involved just access to infrastructure. The red arrow points to a fire hydrant that was buried by trees. So part of the work involved just exposing fire hydrants for the point when eventually fire hydrants had water in them. Because when we left, they did not. We went days without any water whatsoever. So fire still occurred. That was part of our responsibilities as our strike team to cover fire protection for 2 cities. It presented some unique challenges for most of us from an urban setting because there were no operating fire hydrants. The complete water system in these 2 towns were down. No water for any purpose, including firefighting.
So we went back to some old skills of finding water in a pond and getting water out of a pond that we later learned was a retention pond for a paper mill. It was not ideal, but it served our purpose. I will tell you, it's the first time in my career, I'm at 43 years, I've never had to shoot goats out of the way at a fire. There are random goats, I don't know who they belong to, but a lot of the livestock was out and moving about because fences were down. The assignments required a great deal of flexibility. What this slide depicts, this was at a fire with 3 units from Pinellas County, Sumter County, Escambia County, and Flagler Beach. And these are individuals that had never met and operated together, but I was quite pleased with the way everyone pulled together. Our response improved over the 11 days. This was the first night. It is every bit as comfortable as it looks right there. We did upgrade the following night. This was an unair-conditioned abandoned school with cots and fans. And then we finally hit the high level here, and we got into an air-conditioned fire station with running water, no drinking water, and air mattresses. And that was quite an improvement over what we started with. So we made it through. If you're not familiar, Walgreens Corporation does a really nice job in disasters. That is a Walgreens pod unit that they bring in to dispense prescriptions. Their stores were shut down. Many of them had no roofs, no power, but they were doing their best in the community to dispense medications. This is a typical business configuration in the city of Springfield. That's a Dollar General store. So again, no ability to buy goods, many jobs lost in their local economy. This was the Springfield Fire Station when we arrived. This would look very similar to what our fire stations in the district would look like. Fire station had no roof, no doors, no windows, and all of the office and living quarters were full of rainwater. And they were trying to operate out of that. We commandeered the lower portion there, the one-story portion, we commandeered a drug treatment center to set them up temporarily in a fire station. I checked with them yesterday. They've now moved out of that into a mobile home to operate out of at their fire station. But we needed a place for them to operate out of. They got them out of the weather. We got them some new sense of normal. Everything there was no power for day 8, so that's a large generator being brought in for our temporary fire station. Things that make me proud, Bay County, which is the county we were in, they had one of their firefighters die while we were there doing debris removal. And I came back to the fire station that night, and I was actually really proud that our crews had gone through their debris pile, found the flagpole that was in the debris, tied it off with ropes to a broken tree stump, and hoisted a flag at half-staff in honor of that fallen firefighter. The community was not at all happy with Verizon, as you might imagine. There's something special about painting it on a restroom door besides. But on day 8, there was no Verizon service still. So AT&T picked up a lot of load there, including our own. Many of the residents were not at all happy with the potential for looters. This is the only one I saw that had a count. Don't know if it was legit, but it does make you think about it a little bit. And we were there for 11 days, and at the end of the deployment, all the trucks are there with their hoods and caps up, and so we can take over the truck and see what damage you've done on the journey before you head home. And then we did a 7-hour trip home at the end of it. Great experience for me, great lessons in deployment, but great lessons here in the local community, some things that we learned, some things that we reinforced. So some challenges that we faced. With any disaster, your mission starts off as A, and by the time you actually arrive on site, it's gone through B, C, and D. So we had some mission creep. We deployed with virtually no notice whatsoever in the middle of the night. The lack of cell phones, anticipate that at a local level, was significant. And even with the big carriers like Verizon. Lots of competing interests for the same resources. Imagine that same experience here in Pinellas County, many cities competing for the same limited amounts of resources. And that's what they found there. And the statewide radio system became overwhelmed very quickly that it was unusable for us. The damaged infrastructure, again, imagine all of our cities with no traffic lights, no road signs, no water. So traffic was horrendous, still low-hanging power lines, and no water for drinking, flushing, or hydrants. And for those of us that are dependent completely on your phone for Google Maps and ways to get around, when you don't have cell service, you don't have Google Maps or any other type of navigation. And that presented a challenge for those of us on an away game. People get really desperate after a number of days with no water, food, electric, and cell service. On the day we left, cash was still king, because many of the businesses, while they were there, they had food stocks, they had inventory, they had no way to process any charge cards. So cash became important, paper maps became important. We were a bit surprised at the unintended consequence of curfews. Bay County put a countywide curfew in for 7 p.m. each evening. Great intentions, but it has a lot of spillover effects for those that are trying to work as responders, get supplies, get food stocks, because at a 7 p.m. curfew, retailers all start shutting down at 5 o'clock, so their staffs can get home before the curfew kicks in. So that's something we didn't plan for. We left for very warm weather. We did not plan for weather on day 5, getting down into the 30s, so we had to do a scramble there, and we've all got to work through the established systems. I believe it is Panama City went off on their own quite a bit, and now there's about a $2 million dispute on resources that they requested on their own that the state and FEMA are pushing back on them and saying you went outside the system to acquire it. Most everyone there is working outside their normal job description. I don't know that I met a person there that was working in their normal job, and most of the people I met, particularly in law enforcement, were from outside that area. The Springfield Police Department is a total 20-member force. Anyone that's in the middle of a disaster, take pictures early and often, and take pictures of important receipts. You'll be amazed how quickly receipts disappear from your pocket, from your car. Those receipts become really, really important. It shouldn't be a surprise that a presidential visit drains a tremendous amount of resources from any recovery operation. They're just very labor intense and resource intense. I will say that the drivers in Bay County were absolutely amazing in yielding the right of way day after day after day, even if I thought they would be completely silent and numb. They were still a great city or a great county to work with. Again, the inland damage can be quite severe. Just so you know, all the deployments are through a well laid out plan. There's no freelancing. There's a very organized system for how resources get deployed. And there's a very organized system for how agencies, everybody that deployed, gets their complete costs reimbursed by the state and FEMA. So it was a pleasure for me to go and to help those communities, particularly Callaway and Springfield. They're tough communities to begin with economically. So I honestly, I don't know how they get back on their feet with that much infrastructure damage, and when so many of the jobs in the communities were, the businesses were destroyed. I really don't know how they get back on their feet. So thank you for the time. Yes, ma'am.
Chief, have you had any updates besides saying that it's going to be difficult for them? Have you been able to reach out to them since you've been back?
Yeah, only the fire department, and they're doing well. They're back to routine schedules. They'll be about 2 years out of their fire station, so they've moved into a mobile home, which they're quite happy with. But how the entire infrastructure gets back up and operating and how the community gets whole again, I honestly don't know how they do that. Yeah.
Does anyone from the commission add?
Chief, that was really impressive what you guys did. Are you going to the county to share this and update our own emergency plans? Because some of the stuff that you highlighted made, at least me, I'm sure most of us felt like maybe our plans needed to be revisited in terms of disaster?
We've already done an after-action review with all the county resources. There were a lot of Pinellas County resources there, Sheriff's Office resources. So we met with about 100 people in the last 2 weeks to all kind of share the lessons we've learned out of that and update all of our plans at the county level and at the municipal level. And as far as the Florida Fire Chief's plans, we're working through that on some lessons learned that we don't want to miss.
Thank you very much.
Commissioner Hammond?
Just out of curiosity, both Nick and I are amateur radio operators. I was down at Punta Gorda after Charlie, so I know what you saw, and what you saw was probably worse than what we saw down there. I was just concerned, did you have ham radio contingencies?
There were ham radios operating in the Emergency Operations Center for Bay County, but when you've got 60 visiting resources from all over the state, we didn't have the capacity to communicate by ham radio with all the mobile units. So those, we ended up with a good partner with AT&T, who outfitted us with some temporary phones, so that at least in our team, we had communications and mapping. But I was surprised how long Verizon was down, with lots of Verizon resources on hand. I stood in a Verizon 50-foot trailer with a tower up in the air pointing to the phone, and the technician who was there, he offered me a battery for my phone. But I'd really like cell service. That'd be really nice right here. But, so that was a surprise, how big that outage was.
The cell phones usually don't work during those things.
So, yeah.
Thank you.
Anyone else on the commission? Thank you.
Thank you. And as
Commissioner.
we head into next season, just give it very good thought. We're very lucky. And just be wise as we move into next season. Thank you all. Have a great holiday.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Agenda item number 2 is public comment. Any member of the audience may come forward, give their name and address, and state any comment or concern that they may have regarding any matter which the City Commission has control, excluding agenda items. Each speaker will be limited to 3 minutes. Would anyone like to come forward? Hi, John.
Good evening. John Fansfield, 448 Harbor Drive South. I thought you'd want to be appraised of a relatively new problem on Harbor Drive North. There's a drainage issue. Over the past 6 months, 2 rainstorms have produced flooding in the streets that's knee-deep in certain areas. I was fortunate enough on the August 29th storm, you might remember. I had heard that there was very deep water over there. Unfortunately, I drove over. A friend of mine was out of town for the summer, and there was a lot of water in his garage. With a wet back, I had emptied it about 29 times to get all the water out of there. If that had sat there, for a long period of time, for a month or something, that would be bad. And then just Sunday, I guess it was, we had a relatively brief storm. Again, knee-deep water going up the driveways. When cars go by, particularly like a UPS truck, then you get waves going up, and then that crashes into the house and go into the house or the garage. So the people on that street, or at least the one who I helped, has been there since 1994, and this has never happened before. And these are, relatively normal kinds of storms we've had. I hate to think what would happen if we had a 3-day deluge like they had in Texas, or a tropical storm coming up. So I'm hoping that the city will be able to look into that to see what sort of things can be done, whether a new stormwater drain needs to be added in a particular area or whatever. I'll send over photos that I've taken, because it helps to see where the water's pocketing when you come hours later, it can be gone. So I hope you'll have a chance to have this looked into and see if there's something that the residents can think about in terms of fixes. Also, I'd like to thank the present commissioners and the past commissioners that encouraged me to run for IRB City Commissioner, which will be decided this March. I have new appreciation on what you do up there, and I hope to be working with you in the coming year. And hope you have happy holidays and a peaceful new year. Thank you.
Thank you, John. Is there anyone else under public comment tonight who'd like to come forward?
375 La Hacienda. Two topics. I do want to talk about the Christmas billboards. We've been, had a nice group of people help us put them up from every group, Rotary, A2K, you name it, kind of like cross section. And people that aren't in other groups came out and helped, got the word out and everything. We were limited to the same number of billboards we had last year. We had Sandbar go out of business, and Salt Porch picked up their site. The Little League added a board this year. I helped them a little bit with the money. Got a nice design, they seem to like it. And Krabby Bill's changed their graphics, put another one up, same place. You don't see this thing, but if you're on my Facebook, you see that I promoted the fact that they're up and everybody was helping, and from that people generate responses that unsolicited. I wanted to read a few of those. They're in my records. Here's a couple. These are enjoyable to catch as I drive through the area. I salute the talented folks who created them. I love the IRB Christmas cards. I think they really make our city unique. Another person said, they look great. I enjoy them as I ride home from work. Thanks to all who helped. They're awesome. Can't wait to see them all. Thank you for your super community production. Another unique aspect of Indian Rocks Beach. There weren't any negative comments, that's all I have. Anyway, we enjoyed putting them up. It's been a challenge dealing with the winds. I've been going out, I drive through Indian Rocks a lot, more than the average person, so anytime I see one that's not quite right, like tonight I went out and adjusted 4 of them, and sometimes you have to move them. Sometimes these metal poles actually bend over. It's amazing what a windstorm coming out of the northwest can do. But we had that problem last year, and I think the city relocated 2 of the billboards to other appropriate locations. So anyway, it's a challenge. I don't know if this program's going to last as long as the last one did, but it's been fun working with them. One other quick comment. I don't see Dean here tonight, and I was just wondering if we've made any progress on talking to the DOT people about putting our name on the bridge. I go under that bridge regularly in my own boating, and every time I go under it, I think, I wonder if that's going to happen one day. Do you know if that's continuing to be researched?
You looking at me?
Yeah, I'm looking at you. I guess I'm not allowed to ask a question, but this is where I brought it up 6 months ago.
I'll have them address it later.
I just think it's a good idea, and if they need my help, I know quite a few people in the county and the city and the DOT, and I can make a few phone calls. Not that that will make it get done, but anyway, I'm prepared to help. Thank you.
Thank you, Bob. Is there anyone else who'd like to come forward at this time? Okay, I'd like to have Pat Marzulli come forward.
In case you don't know who this is, this is Pat Marzulli, who actually grew up here, went to Largo with one of my siblings, and I think he's very special, so we asked him to come here tonight. I want to read you what he did that is so important. He was in the Catalina Channel Swimming Federation, which was in California. He broke the record of the oldest person completing the swim when he did it in September at the age of 69. So, he was 69 in 311 days.
That's what you just said, he did 69.
Can you tell us a little bit about what happened? I mean, this is the second time, right? Have you done this, or?
No, it's my one and only time for the Catalina Channel, and I won't be doing it again. If somebody wants to break my record, they can have it. I'll be happy to hand them the award next year, or whenever it's broken. Catalina Channel started, the first swim for the Catalina Channel started in 1920, and it was really a promotional swim. It started by the guy named Wrigley, and he had a hotel
out on Catalina Channel. And Catalina Channel is essentially a desert island. I mean, I was in Arizona in April doing some swims, and it doesn't look any different than the high desert in Arizona in the Tonto National Forest. Ain't no rain, ain't nothing. But he puts a resort there, and he starts trying to promote it to get people to come, and he gives away a lot of prize money. And that's how he sucked all these guys into swimming. And at the time, it was a lot of money. Anyway, I paid the equivalent of what he was giving away just to do it. So I didn't get any money. So there have been a little over 500 people. As of this year, there were 500 people that have completed successful crossings of the Catalina Channel. There are people that have done double crossings. And there have been a number of guys. One guy that broke the record of the fastest single crossing, he did it about, I don't know, 2 weeks after I did my swim. And the point is, there are multiple channel, I mean, they're you know, the same, that guy that did it the 7th time and broke the speed record for a one-way crossing, it was his 7th time. So I suppose when you look at the 500 plus people, somewhere there's some duplications. But in almost 100 years, there's 500 people that have managed to do this. Now what's really remarkable is, and I told Bob this before, and it's good. I want the people here in Indian Rocks Beach to understand. I'm out there, and if you see a bunch of maniacs out swimming in the Gulf, usually starting at 12th Avenue, and then we go north, or we go south, or God knows where. The point is, I probably have a half a dozen friends that have done the Catalina Channel. And while I may be the oldest, I'm also the slowest. So the only thing I'm going to say is this is a testimony to outliving your competition. It probably has nothing to do with my ability as a swimmer. Just the fact that I'm stubborn and I'm cranky. And, or at least my team would agree to that. And the short story is, we drop you off, you swim ashore, and then you raise your hand, and this is in the middle of the night at 10:30, and then you start swimming. And every 30, 40, whatever your pace is, you stop, take fluids and gel packs to sustain yourself, and you just keep going until you end up at Palos Verdes, Rancho Palos Verdes, big steep cliffs, and then you climb or walk or crawl, as I did, up a really rocky slope. It's not a sandy beach. It's not like this stuff. You know, you try to stand up, the waves knock you down, you break an ankle. I mean, all kinds of stuff can happen. But that's the long and the short of it. So some people take a long time, and some people take a short amount of time. And I would be embarrassed to tell you that the guy that has the speed record did it in half the time it took me to swim. It's pretty embarrassing. And there's also some people that have done the double crossings in not much longer than it took me to go one way. So,
yeah, you finished.
What's that?
You finished.
I did finish, and they were much younger when they did. So that's all I'll say.
15 hours and 29 minutes?
What?
What was the temperature of the water?
I think it went from 67 to 72, and I'm grateful it wasn't colder. I worried about it being cold. It can be very cold. It can be English Channel. It can be English Channel cold. One of my friends, the first time he tried it, got hypothermia and lost 3 hours. He has no memory of 3 hours of his life. They took him to the hospital because he had hypothermia. That did not occur to me. That was not my problem. Thank God, cold was not one of the problems. Just grinding it out.
Just want to say you started to swim at night at 10:30,
Yeah, 10:30.
and you swam until the day after, until 2 in the afternoon. So we swam for 15 hours and 29 minutes.
And you were on the boat right there?
I was on the boat,
Time,
I
was
was
like
up.
watching as it was going along.
Actually, she and another, no, I'll say this, and everybody that's ever done anything like this will understand. You know, when you run a marathon, it's not to disparage runners, because I don't. I can't run. So, I mean, I'd rather swim at the time. But, you know, you see things. I mean, it's visual. It's all, and you can stop and you can drink and you can socialize. When you're swimming, you better lock all your demons up really deep inside, because if you have any, they're going to come and talk to you. And, so, but as I say, you will see a lot of people out here in Indian Arch Beach. This has been I won't call it a mecca, but it's a mini mecca. There's a lot of people that train off Indian Arch Beach, and you'll see them out here swimming. You'll go, what in the heck are they doing? They're channel swimmers, they're Catalina channel swimmers, they've done Manhattan, they've done other swims. We really have a big open water swimming community. And the other thing that I don't think people understand is it gets dadgum cold in our water. We can train for cold water swimming here, at least in the winter. We can't, obviously, in the summer. Once July comes, just stay in the pool. Anyway, that's all. Thank you so much. And I'm really, she told me to be here, I'm here. I don't know what I'm doing here.
No, I think it's important that we get to know people in our community and some of the interesting things that they do that we may or may not know about. So this is from the city of Indian Rocks Beach.
Thank you.
And we appreciate you and your swimming and doing something that maybe someone your age hasn't done, maybe my age hasn't done. And I just wanted to say thank you for coming out here tonight and being with us.
You're welcome. The only thing I would say is this. You know, there is one thing to keep in mind when you get somebody supposedly of advanced age that does this thing. The thing about it is, you have to understand that if you put your mind to something, you can do it. It doesn't matter what it is. I mean, if what I've done can be some kind of inspiration, which I don't claim to be inspirational, I don't claim to be somebody's role model, but it's just important to keep in mind, if you really, really want to do something and you put your mind to it, it can be done. Age is not a barrier. You know, health can be a barrier, but you can overcome health odds. I mean, there's just lots of things everybody can do on an individual basis. And I encourage you and anybody to just challenge yourself.
Even if it's a thank you.
Yes.
Kathy, Matt, come forward. I thought it was important tonight also to bring Kathy Mack here tonight. Many of you know her, she's with Century 21 and she does the toy drive many years. This year we're trying to reach 200 bikes, right? Yes. So I just wanted you to briefly tell about how this happened. I asked Commissioner Phil at our last meeting, but I wanted you to talk about it too.
Okay, well, it basically started out 11 years ago for me. It's been going on a little bit longer, but what ended up happening is they had another person doing the toy drive, and I just, you know, got familiar with the toy drive in the Homeowners Association 11 years ago, and I went to the toy drive, and, you know, I was kind of expecting something a little bit different than what was there. It was small, you know, it was very quaint and everything, and I brought like 5 skateboards, and I went up to the stage to put the toys, and there was like not a whole lot. And I'm like, well, this isn't right. You know, so I just decided at that point that I was going to get involved somehow in some way. And it turned out that we were at the Taste of IRB, and the person that was doing it before decided that she wasn't going to do it anymore. And Becky Griffin was president at the time, and she goes, now what am I going to do? You know, this is November, the Taste of IRB. How am I going to put on a toy drive in December? And of course, me, raised my hand, and we were in it because I've got the parking lot all visualized on what I'm going to do and everything. And that's pretty much I've been doing it every year. And I've decided from now on I've changed themes for this toy drive. And we benefit Shepherd's Village, Grace House, and MacDill Air Force Base. And we've been doing this for many years. And the thing I decided to do the last couple of years was go ahead and make it big and do different things. And I have to honestly say that's not going to happen again. What I'm going to do is I keep watching that Christmas show that's on Monday nights, the Christmas light show that everybody keeps building and building. And I just told Mr. Beggins, I said, well, dude, this is what we're doing. It's gonna stay Christmas and it's gonna get bigger and bigger to the point where he's gonna have to buy the lot next door so I can buy a new building so I can decorate that also. But anyway, for this year, what I'm doing is, and my goal was 200 bikes. We are still going ahead and benefiting Shepherd's Village, Grace House, and McDill. There are so many kids. We've got a list it just got so large. And McDill Air Force Base, basically it's for the active duty soldiers that are actively working for us and the ones that are injured, that are in the hospitals that they just can't work anymore. There's no money coming in, so kids are not getting anything. So we are stopping that. We're going to make sure that they do get something. So the party is tomorrow, and I'm inviting all of you to come. And I've got our limousine that is going to go and get the kids at Grace House. Shepherd's Village is not coming, but we are bringing toys to them. They have a stay period of 18 months. So the kids last year all got their bikes. And so they're not going to be coming this year, but we will be delivering toys to them. Then the balance of the bikes that are left after Grace House has gotten all theirs goes to McDill. And the Homeowners Association comes and picks them up and delivers it. But anyway, the limo will be bringing the children in. I have Krabby Bill, who's going to be making the food for the kids. Then I also have stockings that every child is going to get. We have Mr. and Mrs. Claus. We have a disc jockey that's going to be there with the Christmas music. I have a snow machine, so we will have snow. And then this weather is going to kind of feel like it. And I do have 2 fire pits that have been donated by AMI, the chair guy. He has donated 2 fire pits and a bunch of chairs. So it's going to be really fun. I decorate the office every year. I mean, if you stand still in that office, you will be decorated. You know, everybody knows they kind of leave the office very early towards the season here, so they don't. But anyway, that's the story. It's from 6 to 9, and I really enjoyed doing it. And just as an example, if you guys are there and you see the children get out of that limousine,
Awesome.
it's just you. Oh, they always make me announce, and every year I start cracking, just because they have no clue what they're going to. They just think they're going to a little toy drive party, or what, if they even know they're going to a toy drive. And to pull up to the parking lot the way it is, the whole parking lot's going to be tented. I've got two to four tents coming, so it'll all be. They're gonna know they're in for some treats.
Kathy, she's a really a gift to our community to have somebody who would do something of this magnitude and every year outdo herself and have more bikes, and we really appreciate you.
And I'm so happy that you came in. I want everybody to know about you, because you must really, what do you think about yourself when you are able to do this? It's such a joyful and such a good thing.
It's so funny, Cookie, because I'll get this all done, and tomorrow night I'm going to go to bed and start dreaming of what's happening next year. This just goes on.
All right.
Does our city attorney have a report tonight?
No report, Mayor.
And our city manager?
Thank you. One thing I want to do, I'd like to give just kind of an update of what we've been able to accomplish working together to implement the day-to-day operations and the projects that are set up for the 5-year capital plan, the budget that the commission approves every year. But before I do that, from time to time we acknowledge people. I want to take a minute as city manager to acknowledge the passing of Sandy King, the wife of Larry King, and all the good works that she did in her life. 2018, and this is a we thing. This is the staff, the elected officials, the department heads working together to get projects done. A recap of the year were street reconstruction projects, South Harbor Drive, Bell Place, Brown Park parking, 13th Avenue. 2 drainage projects, one on 20th and one on 20th Avenue Parkway. That's part of our grant program where those 2 projects were funded at a 50-50 rate. Completion of Phase 3 City Hall renovation. The Public Service Warehouse building closeout. The decorative street sign project. The First Street Boardwalk reconstruction out by Villa Galachi. City Park upgrades, poured in place material at the 10th Avenue Park. The complete reconstruction of the new park at Keegan Clare, which includes parking, landscaping, sidewalks, golf carts, and volleyball. Renovation of the Cole Park and Nature Park Reserve restrooms. Response to Irma, the continuing efforts of filling out FEMA state forms to hopefully be able to reimburse at some point in the future. Red Tide response, based on a comprehensive response plan for the beach and the waterways with the county, private contractors, and the city of IRB. And I can tell you the updated amount of fish that we picked up during that period of time is about 60,000 pounds of fish. The Pocket Park opening, the staff involvement and/or coordination for 28 events in the year. Implementation of C-Click Fix. Implementation of videoing of regular city commission meetings, 1,000 building inspections, new and renovated IRB entrance signs, seasonal decorations, installation of our 4th and final free book box, and solid waste, the collection and hauling of 9 million pounds or 45 tons of garbage out of IRB, and 1.2 million pounds or 600 tons of yard waste hauled from the city. Adoption of the 2018-19 budget, which included the highlights of a $7,000 net increase over the previous year. Reduction of the mill rate from 1.93 to 1.8326. I have to say all those numbers to make Dan happy. Elimination of the public services position and outsourcing of beach accesses, islands along Gut Boulevard and the Walsingham Gateway maintenance. $450,000 in street reconstruction. Museum renovations and additional parking. Beach access improvements. City park upgrades, including 2 new pickleball courts. Merit-based pay raises for eligible employees. All this done in the budget with a reduction in the mill rate, with no franchise tax or no stormwater fee. GFOA, Certificate of Achievement for Excellence in Financial Reporting associated with our CAFR. Partnerships, A2K, service days, the county park project. Those were 2 work days, including the recently added decorative fence along the front of the property. Sponsorship of A2K of the fall employee luncheon. IRB Homeowners Association. Sponsorship of the volleyball court that's in Keegan Clare. Sponsorship of the employee luncheon. City A2K IRB homeowners. That was a 3-way split of the gateway entrance sign. The library. We had a handful of comments during the budget process about the library. I want to emphasize it. We have 1,743 active members. 1,418 are IRB residents. 17,600 items will be checked out at the library this year. 382 children attended children's programming. 453 adults attended adult programming. 1,200 people use computers in the library. The things that we provided free are the book club, meditation class, story time, summer reading program, etc. The value of the IRB collection in our library is approximately $529,000. Last but not least, in a recap of the operation of the city, is the Friends of the Library. They donated over 4,000 hours to assist in the operation of the library. That's worth $60,000 in in-kind value. And this year they've added 9 additional volunteers to the city. I'm a proud city manager, and I'm proud to work with our staff, proud to work with elected officials, but that summary, and that's not a detailed summary, that's probably a 30,000 foot summary. That's a lot of things accomplished, and I'm thankful to the commission in this time of the year when we're sharing what we're thankful for. I'm thankful to the commission that I work with a group of elected officials that understand their role and my role in the operation of the city, and by that I think we're able to get all these things done. And the partnerships here, it's just, I've said this before, I said it when I first started, I'll say it again, the partnerships that we have with groups like A2K and the homeowners and Rotary is unheard of. I have managers at the countywide managers meetings, I'll bring up just the fact that that Julie Hoofnagel's coming to bug me again about where we're going to spend money. That's an awful problem to have. So I'm very thankful. I just want to give an update, and in the first of the year, we'll talk again about what's coming up and where we're going. And the only other comment I'll make is Bob brought up again the idea about the emblem or some type of signage on the bridge that's owned by FDOT. And I think y'all probably know about FDOT, that when you get involved with FDOT, there's usually an array of complications involved in that. I've gotten myself involved in that. The probability of that happening just because the cost involved is not real high. To give you an example, they've already told us they have a committee that we have to go through to propose something like this. We have to hire an engineer to do drawings and do calculations. If they allow us to put something on the bridge, we take on a certain amount of liability and responsibility and maintenance on the bridge. I'm not saying it's not going to happen, but I've involved myself. It may take a little longer for us to figure it out, but obviously we're not going to obligate ourselves to some type of long-term agreement with FDOT to put decals or put some kind of signs on the bridge if it obligates us to a long laundry list of whereases and responsibilities. But we'll continue to try to hammer that out. That's the only update I have about the bridge. Thank you all. But I'll be happy to answer any questions that you have.
Thank you.
3C, Commissioner Hanna, do you have a report tonight?
No, other than the fact, wish everybody a very Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. Thank you.
Okay.
Commissioner Palumbo?
Well, I was going to say something about the Christmas toy drive tonight, or tomorrow night, but I think that we covered that pretty well. And thank you not only for that, but also the turkey drive. I think that was also something Kathy was heavily involved in. Other than that, Merry Christmas and Happy Holidays to everyone out there.
Commissioner Robel?
Yeah, just while Kathy's still here, I don't know if a lot of people know, but in 2006, when I was volunteered to take over the Homeowners Association, Kathy was at that very first meeting, and she said, whatever kind of promotions you want to do, I'll find the money for it. And with her help, we did do the Taste of IRB, took over the biggest beach party, and with her help, I think we actually did have the biggest beach party ever one time. But other than that, she's been a great person in the community. She used to live down the street from me when I first moved here in '97, and she's always been involved, and she's a great asset to our city. Thank you. Unfortunately, she doesn't live here anymore, but
I work here.
I know she works here. She does a great job for
I spend more of
everybody.
my
So,
time at the office than at home.
but anyways, Merry Christmas. Have a great New Year.
Vice Mayor Hoffman? At this time, Greg, would you come forward? This is the last time I'm coming down tonight.
You're not giving up a good IRB.
I wish you a lot of candle for me.
Everybody's a comedian. They don't know what the cables are about. I was in the city manager's office today, and I noticed this plaque, and I read it, and I'm in his office at least several times a month, and I knew it was new, and it said, International City County Management Association in honor of 30 years of service to local government, Brentley G. Mims. He is recognized for significant contributions and achievements in the advancement of local government administrations. And I said, when did this happen? And he said, well, they sent it to me. And I said, you didn't tell me? He said, no, I didn't. So if you have any idea working with public officials and local government, if you think it's easy, you are absolutely wrong. It is not easy. And I wanted to recognize Greg tonight. You heard so many things he talked about. He has been such a great part of our community. I've worked with 3 city managers, and I'm proud that he's like my brother and friend, and his ideas are endless. And so I'm giving you this, but I do have a goodie bag for him, just so you know. You know I have to have a bag for somebody. So. And along with being such a great city manager, your wife has to put up with a lot of things, people calling you at all hours of the day or night. So there's something in here for both of you.
Okay.
And you want to say anything?
I'm good.
Hold it for a second.
Yes. Oh, that's very nice. There we go.
So
One
fun.
more. There we go. Yeah.
So this is the end of the year, and this is our last meeting. And I decided to do a short message from the mayor because I thought it was important to always talk to you about how I think things are going in my first 9 months and with our new transition of our new commission. So sometimes looking back helps one remember what matters most. A couple years ago, I began to pick a word to define what I wanted to accomplish inside myself. The word in 2018 was kindness. And I thought of kindness because of some spoken words by Maya Angelou. I've had so many rainbows in my clouds. I bring everyone who's been kind to me with me. Kindness. You heard our city manager talk about the endless events, the capital projects, and how we've surpassed so many things that we've done in the past. All wrapped up with citizens and small business people and staff creating beauty with pride, love, and kindness. All jobs well done. When I had the opportunity to be a part of what is best, it is serving our community, and now as mayor. And I have to say that the respect and the support and the kindness that have been shown to me is unwavering. And I'm grateful for the chance to bring our community lives and ideas and a giving spirit and an open mind, and have the opportunity to show what we can do with our new commission. We have a lot to learn and to share, and I found that out when we had our first women's tea. And there was a lot of power in that room. And I thought to myself that in more things that we do in this community, we can find more goodwill. It's so much easier to be negative and create fear and be a naysayer than to believe in hope and find optimism in the darkest moments of our existence. That being said, I believe in all of us and what we can do together, what we can accomplish with persistence, and the joy that fills all of our souls.
Are there any additions or deletions? No. Consent agenda. Is there a motion?
Can I?
Yes, sir.
I haven't asked Randy about something. I don't want to put it back on the agenda or anything. I would just like to ask a question about one of the items on there. If you wouldn't mind, is that okay with the commission?
First I'll read the items so that we can have a reference point. Consent agenda. There are 4 items on the consent agenda, items A through D. Item A, approval of the November 13, 2018 regular city commission meeting minutes. Item B, appointing David Watt and Jim Labadie of the Board of Adjustments and Appeals as regular board members with a term expiring June 30, 2022. Approval of the 2019 city calendar events. And item D, authorizing the city manager to execute a contract with Waste Connections of Florida, Inc. for the City of Indian Rocks Beach Recycling Program.
May I ask a question about D?
Yes, you
Just
can.
real, and it, I mean, unfortunately, either I was sick or out of town when Greg and I were supposed to sit down, then Greg was out of town and I sat down with other staff. But because we were, at first, at a meeting, we were given a presentation where we were gonna opt out of it. And then I didn't get a chance to talk to Greg, and I haven't brought it up, I don't get to come in and meet with Greg much at all. And I was just wondering if you could explain real quick why we didn't opt out of it. Because they really didn't have a, you know, like the facts or anything at the meeting I was at. And I've had a few people ask me, like, you know, hey, I heard at a meeting we were gonna opt out, what happened, so.
Yeah, well, at the last budget public hearing that we had, we discussed it, and the decision, the staff recommended and the commission agreed that we would continue on with recycling and renew the contract. So based on that, we negotiated a new contract with the hauler. And I will tell you, because I know there was the environmental group had a session here recently, and there's been other meetings throughout the county. You know, we're in the same boat that everybody else is in. It's going to be a year-to-year thing to look at what's going on in the market. But that decision was made at the last public hearing on the budget was for us to bring back a new contract. It's a 4-year contract. There's an out clause where I think it's 60-day notice. They're going to provide basically garbage cans for people to put their recycling in, so we can get away from the problem of recycling, you know, blowing.
Right.
But that's the overall gist of it, is that we're going to proceed along and just take it year to year and see what's going on with the market.
Well, I know we've talked about that, and I know that, but I'm just wondering from the time when we had the meeting and then the time it was presented to us that we're gonna keep it, what,
It was and we talked about this at the budget hearing, but it was after Dean and Dan and Calvin at the time, we looked at it, and based on discussions we had with the haulers, and based on discussions that we had with other cities in our community, nobody was pulling out of recycling. And they were going to take the approach that we were proposing, that was to re-up on the contract, look at it yearly. That really was the change, is that we just want to ride this out. There's been a lot of effort here, like a lot of those cities, to educate the public and continue to educate the public on recycling. If you just completely stop it, pull out, then you may never get back in it, or if you do, it causes confusion. And there again, that was discussed at the hearing, was let's ride this out for a while and see what happens in the market.
okay, thank you.
Okay, is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
Motion to approve consent agenda?
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
The motion carries. 6A, BOA 2018-03, quasi-judicial proceeding, public hearing. Randy, would you like to?
Yes, as there is no ordinance to read, but I will, before we begin, remind you we are now entering a quasi-judicial hearing. In a quasi-judicial hearing, you are not making law, but rather applying the facts and criteria in the city's code and law to the facts given to you. In this posture, it is a variance application. With that in mind, before we begin, has anybody on this body had any ex parte communications that is outside of this hearing, one-on-one communications with the applicant?
Yes.
Concerning this matter?
Yes.
Okay, has anybody on this body conducted any site visits for the purpose of evaluating this application?
I live across the street, but I don't think I've ever been on that side of the house.
Yes, I've been there, and I understand.
For this purpose?
Yes.
Okay. Anybody else? Member Hannah, do you feel that your visits or visits to the location and discussions with the applicant would in any way impair your ability to impartially adjudicate this matter?
No.
Member Palumbo, same question?
No, sir.
Will any members of the public or city staff who intend to give any presentation and present any evidence before this body, please stand and raise your right hand to be sworn?
Roger Swimmy?
Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you are going to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you. With that, I tend the meeting back to you, ma'am.
Greg, would you like to give the staff report?
Sure. And I'm going to give a real short version of what it's really, as far as the request, it's a simple request. the applicant's requesting to install a small generator on the side of his property. And the issue is, in the code, there's a 7-foot setback requirement. Where he's asking to place the generator, it would encroach 2 feet into that 7 feet. We've provided in the commission packet photographs, and I don't really intend to roll through those. You all have seen side yards, and you know what those look like. The Board of Adjustment heard the case or the application on October the 24th. There were 3 members present. They recommended denial by a vote of 2-1. The staff recommended approval of it. The only reason why I was not heard in November, the applicant was, I think, was going to be out of town, and he asked for it to be delayed. So if you got questions about what was heard by the BOA in October, while we're just hearing it now in December, that's the reason. So the staff recommended, it was recommended for denial. It's a small generator in the 7-foot yard setback, and you have photographs and those kind of things, but you know, some BOA cases are complex, and we look at site plans, and we look on that, and that really would be all I would cover, and be happy to answer any questions that you have about it.
Do any of the commissioners have a question for the city manager? Mr. Quimby, would you like to come up and just tell us a little bit about your request?
Yeah, my name is Roger Quimby, 407 Howard Drive South. I feel like maybe I should wait till next month with all the great speakers up here tonight. I mean, this is important to me, but it's kind of boring for everybody else, I think. But yeah, I'm looking for a generator. As you know, the last storm came through Harbor Drive South. At least my part was very lucky that we were out of power for about a day. Most of the residents, I think, in the Rocks are out of power for probably a couple weeks, 10 days. So my wife and I, Laura, decided to get a generator. I talked to my neighbor next door to get a letter signed by him, where he doesn't mind the variance. I think the Board of Adjustments, I think that the 2-1 vote was the reason. The one person that came out and did look at the site, approved it. The other 2, I don't think I had enough pictures at the time to get them to grasp. It was pretty much the only place I could put it. You mentioned putting it on the roof. Well, it's a pitched roof, put in the backyard, where I wouldn't need a variance. My backyard's all pavers and pools, so it's basically the only option I have. And they brought up to, Randy will attest to this, I think they brought up a lot of concern about if you gave me the variance, other people in the future may want to put a generator in. And if you gave me a 2-foot variance, excuse me, you'd have to give it for everybody. And Randy pointed out each one stands on its own. They really couldn't get their arms around that. They mentioned it several times, saying, if we give it to you, we have to give it to everybody. And that's not the case, as Randy pointed out to them. And I think that was their biggest concerns of voting it down.
Do any of you have any questions at this time for Mr. Quimby?
I would like to know the noise level of the generator.
Actually, they're much quieter than the portables.
Because I just know when Irma went through, there was a lot of complaints by neighbors and...
Yeah, these are basically, permanent insulated, bolt down, obviously, that kind of thing, so they have a lot more
So
insulation.
there's no decibel levels that you can
No,
say?
no.
Commissioner Hammond?
Phil, just for your edification, this is a Generac generator. They're very, very quiet, much quieter, as Mr. Quimby said, than the portable one that I had. So I think that noise is not going to be a problem. And with the fact that Irma did the damage that it did, it's probably a pretty good idea. I don't have a problem with anybody wanting to be able to turn their lights and their power on, and, during a time like that.
If you approve it, I'll give you all a free shower next time.
Yeah, it's nice.
He will not be doing that as a function of the ethics.
Okay.
Plus it's usually warm enough to shower outside.
True.
But that it is a Generac, and I think those are very nationally known, maybe even worldwide known, and they do have quiet.
I think that it was popular.
Right.
Quiet.
And you did say there's a letter from your neighbor in here?
There should be a letter, yeah.
Is there in?
From Raymond.
Okay.
That was submitted at the last meeting also.
Is there anyone else that would like to ask Mr. Quimby a question?
And he's the only one I think being impacted.
I'm going to have you have a seat for a few minutes, Mr. Quimby, and I'm going to open up the public hearing for comments. Is there anyone who'd like to come up at this time? Okay, we're going to close the public. Oh.
Diane Flagg, 2316 Gulf Boulevard. I think when we think about some of the storms and things that can happen and the health and safety of families and having having the ability to have a generator is going to become, I think, the norm in a lot of homes. And I would appreciate if the commission approved this, because this may be something in the future that we'll all have to take a strong look at. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else at this time? Okay, I'm going to close the public hearing. Do we have a motion?
Mayor, before we do that, there's an opportunity for staff to follow up and the applicant to make any rebuttal to staff.
The only thing I would emphasize is that staff recommended approval when the application, when the report was generated. We still recommend approval. And as a side note, this is another code, land code discussion that we'll have next year about some inconsistencies about what can and cannot be in your side yard, but we still recommend it.
Mr. Quimby, do you have anything else you'd like to say at this time?
No, thank you.
Okay,
Appreciate
thank
your
you.
time.
I'm going to close the public hearing, and now I'd like to have a motion.
Motion to approve BOA 2803.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, and the maker, would you like to make any comments?
But just the fact that I think that these generators, there are 3 that I know of in our own neighborhood right now that are operational. And unless you have solar and battery backup, this is the next best thing. So I think it's a good opportunity.
I think what Ms. Flagg said is probably going to be the norm of some sort of backup type system in the majority of our houses. There's different choices, and this is going to be a popular one going forward.
Anyone else have any comments on the commission? Vice Mayor?
I think that the purpose of the setback was to discourage the building from encroaching too close to another building. I don't believe that when we were envisioning setbacks, that generators were standard appliances for houses, and they are becoming more standard now. If this generator were not sitting on a concrete pad, I don't think this would require even a variance. So it's really just because we want to put a footing there that this is coming in front of the board for a variance. And so I'm inclined to support this and maybe ask that we go back in some work sessions with planning and zoning to envision these types of paths, should they even be applicable to setbacks in the first place. That might be something we should table for a discussion.
I agree.
Greg and I had a discussion about that today, about Mr. Quimby's request, and perhaps sometime next year we'll go back and look at the ordinance and see what we can do to make some changes to it. So, with that, Deanne, will you call the roll?
Commissioner Rovell,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Hufnagel,
Yes.
Commissioner Palumbo,
Yes.
Commissioner Hanna,
Yes.
Mayor Kennedy.
Yes.
Thank you.
Passes. Good luck.
Thank you very much.
All right. We're on 6B now, ordinance number 2018-11. Randy, would you read this in title?
Yes, one moment, Mayor. City of Indian Rocks Beach, ordinance number 2018-11, an ordinance of the City Commission of the City of Indian Rocks Beach to rezone and reclassify lands owned by Hawksbill Moon LLC at 2100 Gulf Boulevard in the City of Indian Rocks Beach, Pinellas County, Florida, legally described as Lot 7, less than north 50 feet, and all of Lot 6, Block 58, re-revised map of Indian Rocks Beach from its present zoning classifications of commercial tourist into a plan unit development, providing for approval of a corresponding plan unit development agreement, and providing for an effective date. This has been a second and final reading of ordinance number 2018-11 by title only, Mayor.
Thank you, Randy. Greg, would you like to do the staff report?
Yes, ma'am. Last month you had the first reading. This is the first plan unit development under our new PUD rules. It's a 4-unit multifamily residential. Really the only reason why this was filed as a PUD was the way the ownership of the land under the units is going to operate, and how the parking is laid out under the building. And beyond that, I'll be happy to answer any questions. I don't believe there are any questions or any objections at the last meeting.
Do any of the commissioners have any questions for Greg? With that, I'm going to open the public hearing. Is there anyone who would like to come forward at this time on this agenda item? Please come forward now. Hi, Don.
Don House, 21 Fort Beach Trail. This is a great project and all that, but I'm not sure if there's a problem here or not. A few years ago, and Cookie, you can help out here because there was some development going in. Bob Lyons was one of the developers and stuff, and you know him. So they were developing some properties here, and they, I think, Cola was mayor when it became kind of a problem with how they were titled. And the city commission actually adopted it, if I'm remembering all this right, and you know how those things just kind of sit in the back of your head and they twirl around for a couple of weeks, and last month this was, and I was trying to remember how this all happened, but there was the city commission actually adopted an ordinance that grandfathered in the units that had been, the title had been done this way, but prohibited titling properties like this ever again, if I remember this correct. And I was thinking, well, maybe y'all address this through the PUD. But then I said, well, in the last meeting, the city attorney said that the only reason I wasn't noticed, and the only reason neighbors weren't noticed, was they weren't doing anything different or illegal in the city. But if titling with a common, I think it has something to do with a common wall and the parking accesses, and the city wanted to see them done as condos as opposed to owning the dirt underneath. And if my memory serves me, I am 67. So if I remember, the ordinance grandfathered in the one. In the block south of me on 20th, there's 3 of them right there in a row. Y'all probably remember that. One was pink, yellow, and blue, or something like that. And they were all titled that way, and became a problem. And so there was 20 properties at that time, and the city said, okay, just don't do it ever again. This is a great project, and this guy doesn't need to be. And those projects had a problem, and it didn't come to light for about 7 or 8 years. And then they got ready to sell them. And if you ever work in real estate, not as a realtor, but people put money in, and I've done that, and title companies come back and bite you in the butt, okay? And so, titles, they can be problematic when you get ready to sell stuff, and that's what happened with these. And the city had okayed the properties, given them COs and everything. It took 7 years for the problem to come up. And if this is illegal the way they're titling it, I'm not sure, but it's what I remember. It really needs to be looked at so that this guy doesn't have a problem down the line, because it's a great project that needs to be done. But, and Cookie, you should remember, I don't know if you were there during the entire thing, but probably should remember part of it. But I know that there was an ordinance that had something to do with the fact that you could not do land like this again, because part of it was subdividing the lot to a substandard lot. That was part of it, the reason they were doing it. And then secondly, a common wall. So I think I know there was an ordinance against it. I don't know what has been done about it. Thank you.
Thank you, John. Is there anyone else who'd like to speak at this time?
Hi there. Rob Ginsky, 2100 Gulf Boulevard, owner and developer of the project down there, and I just wanted to thank the city for helping us move this project along, working with us to bring to fruition. We have a few things to work out, and they were very nice working with us to solve some issues we've had in the past. But I just want to thank you, and that's pretty much it.
Thank you. Anyone else who'd like to speak on this item? I'm going to close the public hearing. Greg, is there anything you'd like to add?
No, we have no issues with it. The new PUD ordinance that we have allows the flexibility to do what we're doing. The next item is a subdivision replat,
Right.
and this is the same mechanism that that was used actually when I was walking in the door when the commission at the time was finishing up the code. The code is the same thing. The code units are sitting on top of a plat where the units match the walls of the complex. So there's not an issue, because obviously every unit in code has been sold, there's been no title problems there. But, and Randy may want to chime in from Lakeland, but I see no issues with that.
Randy?
Narrow comments, Mayor. Insofar as the previous project was mentioned, of course, the going hand rule of thumb for all legal issues is it depends. Not knowing the facts of that situation, I can't speak to why or how that situation worked. I can say that, to the extent there's a concern about title and conveyance, those are private concerns of the private property owner that they should do their diligence on. To the extent there was a representation that people did not receive notice, just like to clarify that the people did receive notice, just not in a manner of direct notice to adjacent owners, but this has been noticed publicly, properly, in keeping with the statute and our ordinary means. And finally, as the city manager aptly noted, the next item on the agenda is a replat. It is the next item on the agenda because it would not have been necessary, but for approval of the PUD. So in the event that this is not approved, then that would also fall by the wayside. But there is a replat to accommodate the new legal, ownership structures situation.
Okay, do you have any questions for the attorney or for Greg?
One just question, I believe we have looked into enhancing communications at this point for projects.
Yeah, it doesn't affect this application, but the directive I've given staff is, and Randy covered it quite well, although we're not obligated to send out individual notices for PUDs when the PUD, the uses that they're going to have there are allowed. What I've directed staff to do is on all PUDs is to send out notices within the radius as a courtesy, but we're not required to do that, but we're going to do that.
Is there a motion?
Motion to approve resolution number, is it 2018?
Sorry, that's the next item. We're on ordinance 2018-11.
That's 11, right? Yeah, 2018-11. Motion to approve 2018-11.
Seconds.
Commissioner Rovell, do you want a second? Is that?
I thought it's fine.
We'll make Commissioner Lowe. Okay. Would the maker like to make a comment on the motion?
No, I think it's a standard subdivision.
Okay.
I don't understand it, but it's ready.
Second?
Second.
Okay. Is there anyone else on the commission who'd like to make a comment? If not, Deanne, would you like to call the roll?
Commissioner Rovell,
Yes.
Commissioner Hanna,
Yes.
Commissioner Palumbo,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Hufnagel,
Yes.
Mayor Kennedy.
Yes. Thank you. Motion carries. We are on agenda item 7A, resolution number 2018-10. Randy, would you read the resolution?
City of Indian Rocks Beach, resolution number 2018-10, a resolution of the City Commission of the City of Indian Rocks Beach, Florida, considering the replat of parcel 1, lot 6, and a portion of lot 7, block 48, revised map of Indian Rocks Beach, subdivision Haven Beach, according to the map or plat thereof, as reported in Plat Book 5, page 6 of the Public Records of Pinellas County, Florida, into one plat known as 2100 Gulf Boulevard, Indian Rocks Beach, Florida, also known as Hawksbill Moon Retreat, described in Exhibit A and contained herein, and providing for an effective date. This has been a reading of Resolution 2018-10 by title only.
Thank you, Randy. Greg, would
Yeah,
you like to do a staff report?
Sure. This goes with what we were just talking about. This is an approval for a replat where the 4 units that are going to be the townhouses would be over the properties that they actually will own. There'll be some common areas, that kind of thing. But this will allow them to go to the courthouse and record a plat to match the PUD that you just approved.
Okay. Does anyone have any questions for the city manager? If not, I'm going to open the public hearing. Is there anyone who'd like to make a comment at this time on this agenda item? If not, I'm going to close the public hearing. Do we have a motion?
Motion to approve resolution 2018-10.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Is there any comments from the maker or the second?
No, I just think that the numbering is odd, that this is numbered before the other. I don't know that it matters, but it's confusing to us.
Commissioner Rovell? Anyone else? Deanne, can you call the roll, please?
Commissioner Rovell,
Yes.
Commissioner Hannah?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Hufnagel?
Yes.
Commissioner Palumbo?
Yes.
Mayor Kennedy?
Yes, thank you. Motion carries. 7B is appointments to the Planning and Zoning Board. We have a first alternate and a second alternate. Deanne, would you like to, Randy, I'll let you read first.
There's no ordinance or resolution to read, Mayor.
Okay, and then Deanne, would you like to give a report on this? What-
We have 3 people that are interested in being appointed to the Planning and Zoning Board. I gave a ballot to each one. You need to pick out 2 and we'll see what we get. And hopefully we'll get.
Could we read into the record just the names of the 3 candidates, please?
I have it. It's Adrian Dossis, Deborah Esposito, and Beth Smith.
And the city clerk, I think, invited all 3 of you here.
Is there any of the candidates here tonight? If you'd like to come forward at this time.
Sure. I am Beth Smith. I'm at 443 Harbor Drive South. And you want me to
just briefly tell us a little bit about yourself?
Okay. We moved here back in 2014 just because we wanted to live in a nice beach community. I mean, we really only looked in Indian Rocks Beach, and from what I've seen and heard tonight, I mean, it's just a great place to live. Wonderful people that, you know, really give all of themselves to Indian Rocks, and I really want to be a part of that. I'm on the board of A2K, and I've done some, you know, I'm on some different committees there, and I would just like to, I just retired last year so that I can devote myself to more involvement in the city of Indian Rocks Beach. So I appreciate your support, and I hope that I can be on the board. Thank you.
Okay, does anyone have any questions? Okay, is there anyone else here tonight that is one of our applicants? Okay, I'm going to close the public hearing, and if you would like to make your...
And Adrian Doss did send everyone a letter stating she was unable to come tonight and gave a brief history about herself.
Once you've completed your ballot, please pass it to me.
While Randy's counting, I'd just like to say it's great that we have more people than the number of available spots.
Awesome.
It's really great for the city.
By your vote of 5 votes for Ms. Davis, or Dawson, sorry, and 5 votes for Ms. Smith, Ms. Smith and Ms. Dawson will be the alternates for the Board of Adjustment, just for purposes of compliance with each one of the commissioners voted for both. There were no votes towards Ms. Esposito.
Well, thank you, and thank you for wanting to participate and help us in our community.
Thank you.
I appreciate it.
I'm excited.
Deanne, when is the next meeting, or how does that work? Or,
You're not finished yet.
oh,
One has to be appointed as the first alternate.
Owing to the, thank you, Madam Clerk, owing to the way that the Code of Ordinances reads concerning the administration for this body, there's a first alternate and a second alternate, such that if first alternate is vacated, basically it's, if there's a vacancy on the board, first alternate gets to go first. So you have appointed Ms. Dawson and Ms. Smith. There now needs to be a vote relative to who will be first versus second alternate. Do we have a separate form for that, or are we doing that orally? Okay.
no, someone can make a motion. Would someone like to make a motion?
I would like to make a motion that Beth Smith be the first alternate.
Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Okay, do you need a roll call?
All in favor?
Or all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay.
It's unanimous, so that was Beth Smith will be the first alternate, and therefore by default, Ms. Dawson will be the second alternate. no good deed goes unpunished.
That's the meeting, so I appreciate your support.
We are now on 7A, our work session, and
That's,
no,
we're through
Yes.
7 items.
sorry, work session is 8A, and this is the discussion of the review of the Gulf Boulevard Florida USF study. And with that, I'd like for one of my most favorite people, Whit Blanton, to come forward for a sec. Whit is the, before you do that, I was just going to say a couple things about, would that be okay? Is the executive director for Ford Pinellas, and I serve as the beach's representative on Ford Pinellas and their secretary, and I've had the opportunity to work with him ever since he came to this job, and I have to tell you, he is outstanding, and I'm very excited that he is here tonight to talk to us about our visioning sessions next year and what he brings to the table and how he thinks we should pursue our goals for moving forward at Indian Rocks Beach. And with that, Greg, your turn.
Thank you. We talked about this during the budget process also. Let me explain what tonight is and what it's not. What tonight is for us to spend a few minutes with and talk about, and for the commission to be comfortable with, the scope of work. Back during the budget process, Whit and I communicated back and forth, and one of the things that you have in your packet is 3 primary tasks, and I know it's hard to see it up here for the public, but there's 3 primary tasks that in the draft of Whit's proposal he put together. So what we're going to talk about tonight is the primary task, and to make sure the commission and the public that's here understands what those are. And then if he's ready to do that, we can have discussions with Whit on what he believes is kind of their staff's timetable. So I just want to make it clear before we get into this, this is not a work session where we're going to dive into Gulf Boulevard, what we like, what we don't like, where trees are, where light poles are, all that kind of good stuff, where we allow mixed use, where we don't. It's to make sure before Whit and his staff go forward with their work, their important work, that the 3 areas that he's covered, that he's drafted, we'll go over those, and then, like I said, have a discussion about the time frame and the schedule, and then as part of any workshop that we have, get any public input. So, Whit, if you don't mind, if you could just kind of cover the 3 areas, and then the commission can have dialogue with you about whether we understand all of those, or if they want to add things or change things.
Great. If I may, just for a quick moment, just because we do have a lot of public present and this touches on the USF study, I want to make a legal note that it's come up a lot. The USF study is not a binding development document for this community. Your comprehensive plan forms the basis of your development. It is the contribution to development. Behind that sits your code of ordinances. With all credit to the people and time and sacrifice, etc., that went into the USF study, it is for the purpose of visioning, and this is visioning, but as we discuss this, please be mindful that this is not a binding legal document insofar as that's discussed. So you may have said that.
And I appreciate that, and now that you said that, let me just also say this, and I mentioned this during the budget process also, we have more than adequate funds to cover what the estimated cost was for Whit and his staff, but what I mentioned during the work sessions, budget work sessions, I mentioned again, Randy's exactly right. The update of this vision document that's been around for a good little while may lead to some other things down the road where if you wind up with a new plan that everybody's bought into, you've adopted it, then probably within what staff will do, we would want to go back and update the comprehensive plan and other documents so we have more of a way to implement. Because right now this is just kind of a nice document, but there's some things lacking in terms of being able to implement it. So I appreciate that.
Thank you very much, and it's a great honor to be here, Mayor and Commissioners. What I would like to do is just lay out my understanding of what this entails and get your feedback so that we're on the same page. And any particular objectives that you want to make sure we cover with this analysis would be very helpful to me. And just to elaborate a little bit on what the city manager said, I believe that this is a necessary precursor document to actually developing the stronger vision, the guidelines, the more binding language that you would need to implement and carry out your vision for Gulf Boulevard. So we really see this as sort of first of two steps. The first task in this is to conduct a context assessment of the Gulf Boulevard corridor. And essentially what we will do there is to paint a profile of characteristics related to development along Gulf Boulevard, looking at data such as land valuation, building valuation, age of structure, some sort of contextual assessment, and compare that with countywide and other maybe some beach community comparisons. Just kind of look at, see where you are, how you're different, how you're distinct. There's a lot that we can glean from just that quick assessment of that. We'll also look at some trends, both that are sort of a larger context of Pinellas County and the Tampa Bay area, and how that may apply to unique trends and conditions here in the city of Indian Rocks Beach. One of the things we'll do with that is to kind of put that in an understandable format so that it's easy for the public and for you all to see and understand how those trends are potentially affecting investor decisions and those kinds of factors for redevelopment, potential development along Gulf Boulevard. In parallel to that, what we would also do in task 2 is to assess the concept plan that's been around since, what, about 2004 or 5 era, and look at what's been implemented, what hasn't been implemented, what are some of the barriers to implementation, what conditions may have changed since that plan was initially developed 10 or so years ago, and then prepare a memorandum of documenting our findings from that evaluation, that assessment. There may be some impediments and barriers that are policy related. There may be some physical barriers and cost barriers that you need to consider. So those are the things we would try to highlight in that second task and document that. In parallel to those two things, and there's really not a predefined sequencing of them, but I think we need to kind of do it together, is to have stakeholder interviews in task 3 to reach out to property owners, realtors, key business leaders, community leaders, to understand what are some of the expectations, desires, concerns about development in the Gulf Boulevard corridor. And then building upon that stakeholder input, we would host 2 community workshops. The first one would be to present some of the context findings in task 1 and 2 and gather input on expectations, what people would like to see happen in this corridor, and equally importantly, what they don't want to see happen. What are the opportunities, what are the strengths? And then the second community workshop would take all that input, we would go back, let that marinate a little bit, and then bring back some ideas and maybe a couple of different options for folks to consider. And that would be the subject of the second community workshop, get feedback on those concepts and ideas. But again, I just want to stress that we would not yet be at the point of writing potential amendments to your comprehensive plan or your land development code or doing anything to really codify some of these things. It's really keeping it at that visioning document so that you have a guideline for making subsequent decisions at a city commission level. And then we would take all those findings and present them in a work session probably similar to this. So that's really outlining it. The cost we proposed was somewhere around $18,000 for doing that. All of those tasks together, we estimate that would be about a 3 to 4 month time frame. And we can get into the specifics of that, but we're ready to begin work as early as late January if you'd like us to get started on this. We have the staff capacity and we've identified the personnel that would work on this. And I will be personally involved in the work too.
Awesome, Whit. Do any of you have any questions for Whit?
Yes, I do have a question. And I understand that the land use code and the comprehensive plan are much more formalized documents, and that's why, especially for this price, we wouldn't be even in the ballpark to get to that. And I wasn't a resident when the original plan was done, but the fact that we keep bringing up that this is just a document, it's not code, and it's not formal, just makes me wonder, what can we do differently this time so that we don't get a vision document that seems to be adopted by the community, but then it doesn't translate into a comprehensive plan and set of ordinances. Because without that, it's just a wish list, right? And so, in addition to your review of the USF plan, is there any ability to benchmark it against the current comprehensive plan, or at least sections of it, or?
Absolutely, and that's what we would do in looking at some of the barriers and impediments to implementation from the last plan.
Yeah.
Is what didn't happen and why.
Yeah.
And there may be some things that are, again, that are policy related that at one point this commission balked at implementing for whatever reason. We need to understand some of those reasons, and we'll tease that out, I hope, through the interviews and from public input as well.
Or at least just knowing that they're not there. We may not ever come to know why they never got implemented, but it would be helpful to know that this block was never even addressed.
Well, your city manager talked earlier about working with the Department of Transportation. That's still jurisdiction for Gulf Boulevard, so there's some things that prior plan may not have vetted with how the Department of Transportation sees its responsibility for maintaining Gulf Boulevard. So that's an important consideration. You may not have had the right-of-way available for some things. I have not done that deep dive into your plan. I was involved before that plan in the city of Indian Rocks Beach. So I can't say I'm that familiar with what some of those impediments are right now, but that's the kind of things we would tease out. And then secondly, what we don't want to ever develop a plan that's just going to sit on a shelf again for 10 more years. So what we would set you up with our recommendations as part of the assessment and the community input, the final presentation would be, if these are the things you say you want, then this is what your action strategy would be.
Great.
So very clearly clarifying that there are certain capital expenditures you may need to make to upgrade stormwater and sewer provisions, for instance, or address lighting. Secondly, there may be some policy changes in your comprehensive plan that we will specifically point to, and how those need to be changed to be consistent with the county-wide land use plan. That's another consideration, is you can do what you want in Indian Rocks Beach, but it has to be consistent with the county-wide land use plan, which we maintain.
It just seems like we're crossing a few things, like where if we had a city planner, they would do this job, but we have Hetty, who, you know, when it comes to what we have in place, a comprehensive plan and all that, that would seem like Hetty, would Hetty be part of this?
She'll be part of it, but this goes beyond her ability to, and I would never recommend that we do that with our own staff. This is a good opportunity for a fresh set of eyes to look at the previous study and look in the future and work with us on coming up with a consensus, but that's above and beyond what internally I would be willing to take on.
So whatever like has to come up with Hetty doing stuff on it would be up and above this $18,000 figure.
Yeah, but it would be very limited.
I think what we would want to make sure is that she's engaged along with the city manager so that they know what next steps might be that they may be asked to do subsequent to this completion of this analysis. So it's not a surprise to them.
Right, so and Hetty would be charging us by the hour whenever she was involved with this?
Yeah, she's not going to do it for free.
No, I know that, but what I'm saying is, okay, so that is up and above.
And when we put the budget number in the budget, and I just don't have it on the tip of my brain at the moment. His figure was $18,000, but I put about $50,000 in the budget. Not saying we need to go spend all that, but that was because of the things I mentioned earlier, because I anticipated other things that we would need to do in the lane code and all that. So there's money to do this thing.
So that $50,000 would include the actual implementing it and doing the projects, or no, just to get to where we start to do the project?
Right, to make sure that we have it in the proper places like the land development code and the comprehensive plan.
And some of this information, if I could just elaborate, like the context analysis, we're doing that work currently for a few other cities in Pinellas County, Clearwater, South Pasadena, and Tarpon Springs. And it's a really robust analytical assessment of a variety of factors that are affecting development and quality of life in Indian Rocks Beach. So we've got that pretty well down. We can draw some quick comparisons to some of those other communities. You know, there's no place like Indian Rocks Beach, but I think it's helpful to see what other areas in the county are dealing with relative. So it gives you some context for understanding some of those conditions and trends as well.
Which is good. Phil, Nick?
Oh, I think you kind of addressed one of my questions, but when we get into costs, we talked about each section, we're talking about cost breakdown structure for implementing the ideas that come out of this meeting. I think that's one of the things I didn't see last time, or when I read the plan is, okay, we have these great ideas, these great visions, what does it take to implement those, and does it take in other cities to implement those?
Right. And to the extent possible, in task 3, we will get there for you. We will provide a planning level, order of magnitude cost estimate for some things. We're not going to get into engineering level of analysis. But for instance, if you wanted to implement a lighting or wayfinding program, for instance, we can spec that out and come pretty close to what that would likely cost you. If you were looking at doing something like undergrounding utilities, I would stay away from that as far as this goes, but when rebuilding a stretch of road, that's going to be maybe a little bit more than we can estimate because we don't necessarily know all the design considerations. But I think in terms of most of your recommended changes here from a policy and a development standpoint, we can estimate the cost to undertake some of those activities.
And I think with your experience throughout the county and looking at other cities, I expect us to potentially see grant options for some of these changes as well in there, or potentially?
Potentially, sure. And our agency provides some grant funding for things that could be covered under this. There may be some other opportunities at the state level too.
Great, thank you.
Just to make sure we're talking about the same costs, if this project is step 1, there's a step 2, which would be the implementation of those ideas into our legal structure, and then there's the actual project. And so what you were just talking about is step 5. 3.
We're talking about step 5.
Yeah, so there's some other, and I think that's what maybe what Phil Roble was getting at. There's some additional costs at the planning and visioning level to make sure that we get all the way to distilling this vision into our code. That's, if we don't do that, we don't do we don't get the full benefit of step 1 if we don't, get it implemented into our code.
No, I agree. And it was, when we went through the pedestrian study, there wasn't a cost at the end of that. There's a lot of recommendations.
Well,
and then there was at the end, there was kind of like an estimate. So just even if we're ballparking, I'd like to know, if we're changing our land use code for this, potentially what is step 5 going to drive into the city for cost and maintenance and those types of things. If we have a ballpark or barometer throughout the county, I'd love to see that.
That's great. I agree.
So that 50,000 will take us up to the implementing part, you're saying, okay. If I may ask, we had that presentation, I don't think it was you that was here a couple months ago, talking about 5-foot wide bike lanes and making our lanes narrower. Was that?
That wasn't me.
Okay.
That's the update of the bicycle pedestrian study. We're gonna have a work session in February that deals directly with that.
And is that big thing?
Yeah.
You got printed out, okay, thank you.
Yeah, we'll be there for that meeting as
Okay.
well. We have a keen interest in that, but that was the county.
Okay.
I mean, that feeds into this because it is
Gonna cross over.
reshaping the.
Yeah, we'll make sure that those are integrated. Any plans and documents that you have that we need to be reviewing, we will take that into consideration in that task 1 context assessment.
Well, I think this is great.
Phil, do you have any questions?
No, just taking it in.
So just so that the public knows, the first thing will be a kickoff meeting, and you will be surveying the documents and doing a lot of the data on the different corridors and gathering as much information as far as growth, redevelopment, etc.
Correct.
And then once you do that, we're going to review that, and then we'll set out to have visioning sessions with different groups How do you,
The way
kind of
we-
explain that, because
Yeah.
there are people here tonight that want to, trying to understand all of that.
I'm very flexible, and as you
Okay.
know, I'm willing to come out and do some extra things if that's needed. But what we've envisioned right now is that we would have stakeholder interviews, which could be one-to-one, or it could be small group meetings. That's fun. And then we have 2 community workshops, which take a while to plan and organize and facilitate. And those are meant to be, 1 to 2, 2.5 hour kind of work sessions, primarily involving the public and key stakeholders. But if there was a need for us to come out and speak to Action 2000 or any other community group or neighborhood association or something like that, and talk to them about what we're finding and get their input, we would include some of those things as well. And that doesn't have to be extra services. We do that kind of stuff all the time.
Okay. Greg, did you want to add, we were kind of talking about that together today.
Yeah, that's something that Whit and I have talked about from the beginning, and you and I have also talked about, is that we would, on the stakeholder meetings, is we specifically would request that Whit and his planners meet with A2K, the homeowners association, larger groups in addition to those. And this is, Julie Hoofnagel and I have had conversations about this. I know A2K is vitally interested in this process. So Whit just touched on it. We make sure we check all those boxes, particularly with our partners in the community, to make sure we get input from the organizations.
Is there anything that any of the commissioners would like to see added to the 3 tasks, the primary tasks that Whit is talking about tonight? Is there anything that you envision or you think might be missing? Anyone have anything? Okay. We need a consensus for the scope of this project.
You want to ask for any public?
Yes, I can do that. That would be great. Whit, if you will take a seat for just a minute, and we're going to open the public comment portion. Would anyone like to come up at this time?
Good evening. My name is Kelly Sistrek. I live at 448 Harbor Drive South. With Forward Pinellas having been formed fairly recently as a county planning agency, I think it would be really helpful to take a look at the work product that they've done already for South Pasadena and Tarpon Springs to see if that meets what the commission and our planning employees envision for this city, and if that work product is consistent with what we think we might want to do here, rather than committing to this study tonight and spending $18,000. I'd like to see, a review of the work product first. Thank you.
Is there anyone else who'd like to speak at this time?
Hi, Bert Valerie. As you know, I'm a business owner at 2113 Gulf Boulevard, 40-year resident here. Was active in getting A2K started and was the first president of it for the first 4 years. We pushed hard to have this USF study done and contributed to the cost of having it done. And we did all these studies and had all these meetings here and had everybody's input. And then finally the report came out, and I think we were all really, really excited by it. And the city endorsed it, and a motion was made, and it was adopted into the city regs or whatever. But it never got to the stage, as I understand it, where it got put into our zoning and regulations and so on. So a lot of the things, if you go and look at what I recommended down in the business triangle, well, you can't do that because our zoning down there doesn't allow that. It's different parts of it. So what I don't understand about what you're recommending here is we all love the USF study, we all love the recommendations, we endorsed it as a commission, as residents, as businesses, and yet it just didn't happen. And I don't see the new recommendation being much different than the old recommendation. I mean, I expect it to be almost the same, maybe with some minor changes. To me, the best that Whit can, and Whit's terrific, and I love Whit. He's just a terrific guy with great ideas, and you'll be very pleased with any work you get out of Whit. But to me, the best thing he can do for us is to actually give us the wording and and the input into how to have these two things match. So the recommendations here fit what our zoning allows, and the actual wording for it. So we're not stumbling with getting it right. And then as he was saying too, that it coincides with the county rules. So we've connected on the county side, we've connected on the city side. What's envisioned here actually gets written into our regs. Okay, I mean, that just seems to me where we dropped the ball. It just didn't happen. And then, you know, you can't blame the commission because you guys change all the time. I mean, I was up there and I didn't get it done. And somebody up there has to take responsibility for making sure that this UF study gets done, that it gets completed, that it gets into the work, and that we follow through with it on a consistent basis. You know, so I don't know how you're going to accomplish that, but you know, I sure after we do this work now again, I just hope it follows through, and you know, y'all just make sure we do what the thing recommends. Thank you.
Thank you, Bert. Is there anyone else who'd like to come forward at this time?
Good evening. From my understanding of the USF study, I've read it.
Did you state
Oh, I'm sorry, that's right. I'm Julie Huffnagel, 2 Fifth Avenue in New Rock Beach. I'm also the president of Action 2000 and I'm very interested in the vision sessions, and I've read through the USF study many times. I was not a resident at that time. And I've also read through all of the commission notes every time that it was presented, and I looked at everybody's comments and what people were thinking. What I do remember from reading through that is that it was never adopted by the commission, and thus it could not really go any farther. And there were some things that were a little bit unrealistic in the study, putting a lot of onus on business owners in a downturn economy. We also did not have a full-time city manager at the time of this taking place. So I would like to take the best of the USF study, and I think that we can do that and put it together in something that we can adopt as a commission and implement. Thank you.
Thank you, Julie. Is there anyone else who'd like to speak at this time?
With that, I'm going to close the public hearing, and Commissioner Robel, I thought you wanted to say something.
Well, I mean, you know, Bert brought up the USF study, and so did Julie, and I remember I was here for all those meetings and everything, and it just seemed like he presented it to us a couple times, and each time it was like, well, wait a minute, we can't do that. We can't have 40-foot buildings right on Gulf Boulevard. We can't close down the middle lane in Gulf Boulevard and put parking all along Gulf Boulevard and all that. And it seems like if you look at that in depth, it's like you can't really do that with our city. And like you were saying, it was like it never sat down with the code people and and all that. It was, I think it was redone at least 2 or 3 times and re-presented to us. And I think finally it got to the point where it was just, USF said, okay, we're done. There's your plan, and it got thrown on the shelf. Because, I mean, if anybody isn't, I don't know if it's available to look at or if it's online still. I think it's still online. I mean, it's just, I'm sorry, but it just seems like there wasn't the cooperation that, you know, with it that had to be to make it realistically, you know, can't have 15-foot sidewalks and 2 lanes down Gulf Boulevard with parking, so. But it has to be very realistic.
I think your point is valid, and that's why I do disagree with Kelly Cicerek. I think that using Forward Pinellas based on their linkages with the county gives us a higher probability that we get something closer and more aligned with reality. The USF study was not aligned with reality.
Not at all.
No.
And so, I mean, I would just like to ask in the scope or in the agreement if we could just ensure that we draw upon the linkage with the county so that we don't get something that's unmanageable.
Yeah, that's really our intent, so thank you for asking that. And just to, it's confusing, so let me clarify some of the roles and responsibilities of these different agencies. So most of Gulf Boulevard through Indian Rocks Beach is state of Florida. There might be a northern part of your city that is county-maintained roadway.
Well, we're county from Walsingham North,
Yeah,
right? Yeah,
right. So there's county and there's state entities that are involved in the Gulf Boulevard corridor. That's the County Public Works Transportation Department. When it comes to land use regulations, that's our agency. So we are the countywide land use planning agency for the Pinellas Planning Council, which has been in existence since the 1960s. And we're the Metropolitan Planning Organization, which has been in existence since the 1970s. We've rebranded as Forward Pinellas as a merged organization. So that happened in the last 2 years, but the work we've done has been around for decades. What it gives us the ability to do is hold up, these are the countywide land use rules and requirements, and these are the Gulf Boulevard study recommendations. Let's compare the two. And that's the starting point. It's not to come up with a brand new plan. It's to look at what you have, what are the barriers and impediments to implementation, what have held you back from achieving that vision, and what tweaks or adjustments in the plan do you need to make to comply with these countywide rules. If that's the barrier, if the barrier is market related or capital facilities related, then we'll identify those as well. But we will ensure, as best we can, a clean linkage between the regulatory framework that you have to work within and your vision for what you want to achieve. And then we may tease out from this, because it's been 10 years, that there are some different expectations in the community. And I think, every 10 years it's really good to have that assessment of your comprehensive plan and your own policy framework.
I thank you, and we saw that this year with some requests for variances in a segment of the town which had been perceived to be a northern business district, and it's currently zoned that way. And so when we're going through this type of review, are we going to evaluate the feasibility of those centers, those strategic centers? I mean, there was
feasibility from a construction and development standpoint, or from a market
zoning,
standpoint?
or I'm not sure. I know you don't do a market report, but I'm just trying to understand where the lines are.
I want to clarify that the one thing we won't do here is a market assessment.
Correct.
That's a little bit more of an in-depth analysis. If you wanted that done, we have a consultant that works with us on the Gateway Area Master Plan and the US 19 corridor that has done great work in those corridors. We don't have that expertise in-house, so that would be additional services if we needed to go there. But in terms of the other items that you identified, other kinds of barriers and impediments to development that are primarily driven by either the physical infrastructure or driven by the policies and the requirements for land development, we can absolutely cover those things. It's really just getting into the market demand that requires some special expertise.
Okay, do we have a consensus for the scope of work and the schedule?
Can I get the was it Pasadena and Tarpon Springs? Can we get those emailed to us, the plan or whatever?
They're in progress, but as soon as they're ready, we'll make sure you have those. South Pasadena just got kicked off, and Tarpon Springs is underway, and we're also getting.
Oh, okay, so they're not.
We're getting ready. I mean, we've done other plans, but these are the kinds of things that we would do in this first task: is look at the data analysis, the geographic information analysis. We can get those to you as soon as they're completed. Okay, sure.
Do we have consensus?
Yeah.
The consensus
A
to
consensus to move forward and with the scope of the schedule and the, you want to say aye? Aye.
Aye.
Okay.
I'm not looking for anything, but I do see consensus to move forward, and what the mayor asked this body was, do we have consensus to move forward with the 3 specified items as the stated scope of work and presently set forth schedule? At least simple majority of the body indicated in the affirmative. So yes, we have consensus to move forward. No further action needed on this item at this time.
Okay. Other business to come before this board? Is there an adjournment? Motion?
Motion to adjourn.
Happy holidays. Is there a second?
All in favor?
Aye. Happy holidays, everyone.